Hi there, I'm Josh, and today we are talking about the GTX 1066 gig in 2023. Now, I am on record for saying that this is the bare minimum to get into gaming right now, and a few people disputed me on that in my last video, so I wanted to give you an in-depth look and see whether or not I was right or wrong. So let's hop into the benchmarks. The GTX 1066 gig released on July 19th, 2016, with a base clock of 1506 MHz, a boost clock of 1709 MHz, 6 GB of GDDR5 memory, 1280 shading units, a 2002 MHz memory clock, a TDP of 120 watts, 1 DVI, 1 HDMI 2.0, 3 DisplayPort 1.4As, and 1 6-pin connector. First game on the list is Assassin's Creed Mirage, at 1080p with the low settings. We saw an average frame rate of 55 FPS, a 1% low of 28, and a 0.1% low of 6. Now this wasn't quite 60 FPS, but I would still consider this to be in the realm of playable. However, if you are looking for a 60 FPS experience, the GTX 1060 might have met its match in 2023. Because up next is Forza Horizon at 1080p with the low settings. We saw an average frame rate of 57, a 1% low of 45, and a 0.1% low of 41. So again, we're not hitting the 60 FPS target. So the 1066 gig is slowly slipping down into a 30 FPS card. And none of this is more apparent than in Starfield, which at 1080p with the low settings ran with an average frame rate of 30, a 1% low of 21, and a 0.1% low of 15. Now this frame rate is going to vary, and this was captured at native 1080p at low settings, so you can decrease the render slider to get a more consistent FPS, or you can take it all the way down to 50% and get 60 FPS because that was what it had defaulted to, and although it was good frame rate, I wouldn't suggest playing a game at 50% of 1080p. I was just running around Neon shooting guards and messing up my save, and this will vary depending on where you are in the map. For instance, Jemison will probably run worse than this, but there are other parts that will probably run better. Lies of P at 1080p with the high settings, however, ran with an average frame rate of 70 FPS, a 1% low of 32, and a 0.1% low of 24. Lies of P is seriously optimized. It's one of the only games on this list that ran at 60 FPS, much less at the high settings. Counter-Strike 2 is a very interesting game in terms of frame rate because I benchmarked this by playing this on A site and B site as CT, and the frame rate varied drastically. But in the end, we saw an average frame rate of 227 FPS. So if you're looking for esports titles, CS2 is probably the most demanding esports title right now, and it ran very well. 200 FPS is what I consider to be the bare minimum for playing CS2, and this passed it with flying colors. Modern Warfare 3 at 1080p with the basic settings ran with an average frame rate of 60 FPS, so 1% low of 45 and a 0.1% low of 38. So again, we were able to hit 60 FPS. Now that's not a big surprise considering MW3 is basically Modern Warfare 2, but it was still pleasant to see a 60 FPS result. So the GTX 1066 gig in 2023 really didn't do a fantastic job at hitting 60 FPS. If your target is more than 30 but less than 60, then the 1066 gig is still chugging along just barely, and I think that means that it is barely suited for gaming in 2023. Now, if you're not looking to play the most modern games, a 1060 will do just fine, but for the sake of this video and seeing if it's still the bare minimum graphics card, I wanted to make sure we could hit 60 FPS, and it seems like we are at the peak right now where 60 FPS is unachievable unless you are using things like FSR. And of course, this was all done at 1080p as well, which is what the average consumer typically uses. So if you're playing at a lower res than this, you're going to be okay. But 1080p is pretty much what everybody runs at. So that was why it was in the benchmark. And that is why I consider this GPU to no longer be a 60 FPS card, but be the bare minimum for gaming in 2023. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like, subscribe, do what you usually do. And as always, buy yourself something nice. Post Editing Fox here. Just want to let you know I have an eBay account. The account name is PCNerd02, PCNERD02, where you can buy graphics cards that I've tested. I also have a Discord in the description down below, as well as a Patreon. Thank you so much.